All right. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Welcome to another insightful episode of Out in Front, where we will tackle a pressing issue facing our society today. Abortion access is the topic for this evening. I'm thrilled to introduce our esteemed guests. We have Lindsay Harmon, the Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Votes Nevada. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. We also have Margarita George, MJ, the Executive Director for Healthcare for America Now. MJ, thank you so much for joining us. And Denise Lopez, the Director of Nevada Campaigns from Reproductive Freedom for All. Denise, thank you. Thank you so much to the three of you for joining. Very excited to chat with you tonight. For those of you watching, we tonight are going to be talking about two Supreme Court cases that are currently on the docket. 2 years after the justices overturned the landmark Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court is now deciding on two major abortion cases, one that will decide nationwide access to medication abortions through the drug mifepristone, and another that could upend federal law known as EMTALA that requires hospitals to provide care in dire emergency circumstances, emergencies that in some cases require abortion care. These are not just legal proceedings. They represent fundamental struggles for reproductive rights and healthcare access across the country. Before we start our discussion here, we have a video to share of an interview that I did with Alexis Salt, a teacher here in Nevada. She was my 8th grade teacher, to share about the birth of her daughter. Her daughter, Matilda, was born severely prematurely at 26 weeks. And if the state of Idaho gets its way up in front of the Supreme Court and is able to undermine emergency medical access to abortion, her story will be the story of families across the country as pregnant people in certain states will lose the ability to access abortion care, even in the case of a life-threatening emergency. So we're going to go ahead and play that video now. Brian, can you go ahead and get that started?
Us.
Thank you. I wanted to have you on today to talk about the birth of your daughter, your birth story. You came over a few weeks ago to meet my baby boy, and we were talking about the birth of your daughter, Matilda, and I would love for you to share that story as it relates to this upcoming Supreme Court case. They're starting oral arguments on April 24th. We're colloquially referring to it as EMTALA, which all relates to emergency medical care. In this case, particularly for pregnant people having access to abortion services when it's a medical emergency. So I want to go ahead and throw it to you to share your story. Take as much time as you need. I know it's an emotional topic. And then we're going to discuss it a little bit.
So in 2005, I found myself in the position a lot of people find themselves in. I was pregnant and I was unmarried and I was living in Las Vegas. My daughter's father is from Texas and he got out of the service and we moved to a small suburb of Houston called Huffman. When we were there, because we were not married, he had a job. I really struggled to find work. Again, this was 2005. So being pregnant, while there were laws against discrimination for pregnant people, it still happens now today in 2024, and it wasn't so great in 2005. So I couldn't get on his medical insurance and I was struggling to navigate. Now I know I was struggling because I was sick, right? I had an extremely problematic pregnancy, but I was really struggling to navigate the state Medicaid, getting my license switched from Nevada to Texas, which was the first thing that had to happen. It was a situation that a lot of people find themselves in their 20s. I had moved several places, a lot of important documents that I needed, and I understand it was my fault. I didn't have. So long story short, I find myself in Houston, Texas with no medical care and I'm pregnant. I went to two doctors. I went to one for an ultrasound. I went to one for a checkup. Neither one of them seemed overly concerned that I wasn't having regular prenatal care, even though I had expressed this, right? the attitude of everyone, from my ex-husband to my former mother-in-law to even the two medical doctors I saw, was, this is what your body is supposed to do, you will be okay. So my mom was in Las Vegas still, and I was advised not to travel in my third trimester. So I booked a trip to come back here. I was thinking of moving back to Nevada anyway. I was really unhappy. It was a pretty abusive situation, which is salient to the rest of the story. So I come back here to Nevada. I'm here for about 8 days and I start bleeding. My mom had only lived here for about 3 weeks. She didn't know where anything was. So I drove myself, my mom and I drove us to the hospital. We were going for UMC because uninsured, right? No medical care. But we ended up at Valley Hospital because if you've ever been back there, those parking lots back up against each other. I turned down Shadow Lane, had a huge contraction, saw maternity, and I was like, this is where we're going. So from the time we pulled in, it was like a little after 11:40 until the time my daughter was born at 12:03. So everything was really, really quick. I don't remember large parts of this. My mom has filled me in on all of this, but essentially what had happened was my blood pressure was through the roof and she was coming, whether I, was ready or not. They were very clear about what my choices were. They did not ask me, they asked my mom because I had signed over power of attorney to her because obviously my ex-husband was in Texas and I was in no way in any position to be making choices at this time. But my mom made the decision, and it was the decision I would have wanted as well, that they should try to save the both of us, right? So I went through an emergency C-section. I don't quite I don't quite know how to explain the pain of that. Like the physical pain is something that I still can't completely process, right? So, but the idea is that this was a choice, right? This was a choice that I had made. I think it's super important to understand though that we always just talk about like the birth story. There is nothing. My daughter is going to be 18 on April 30th. Okay. So if anybody from Valley Hospital is watching this, Matilda made it, she's going to be 18. But there is not a single part of my life that this hasn't and doesn't continue to impact. Raising medically fragile children, bringing medically fragile children into the world is a lifelong commitment. And I think one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen was being in the NICU, right? I was there morning and night. I knew the nurses, how many babies had nobody there? I would very, very strongly urge anybody who thinks that this is a good idea to talk to parents of preemies and get a good understanding of what that looks like, because forcing that on people is it's cruel to the children.
No,
and
absolutely.
and I understand that a lot of people don't care particularly about what is cruel to the person who gives birth, right? Because the idea is that you had sex, so now you have to deal with the repercussions. And we're very puritanical as a society in that regard. But I very much urge you, if this is something you think is a good idea, to really look at like March of Dimes, right? Look at how difficult of a life the children who are wanted and loved and cared for have. when they are born this early, and then multiply that times all of the things that cause women to get abortion. To put a child through that is just, yeah, the cruel is the only word that I can really think of.
And women will die ultimately as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a miracle I didn't die. If I had been in Texas when this happened, and of course, I can't say for sure, right? But I feel like in my soul, if I had gone anywhere but Valley Hospital, that I don't think either of us would have made it.
And that
Honestly.
was, you know, an informed decision
Mhm.
that you made, right? A lot of women, in the case of this, you know, Idaho succeeding in their outright ban of abortion services, even in a case of a life-threatening emergency, these women or these pregnant people won't have the choice either way. It'll be made
No,
for them.
just cruel, or like to force somebody to give birth, to have a C-section, to deliver a baby that has no chance of surviving whatsoever, right? You're delivering a baby that's like less than 9 ounces, 10 ounces. I mean, that's just downright cruelty.
Exactly. And I believe with this case before the Supreme Court, you know, you were lucky. You were able to get the care that you needed and wanted and lived to tell the tale, and you had a healthy child. But women and pregnant people, if Idaho gets its way and emergency abortion services are not available throughout the country, across the country, people will die. Women will die. Pregnant people will die.
And they'll suffer while they're dying. That's I think a big part too, is that like it'll be painful, and it will be a miserable death. And this won't be like women dying in childbirth. There's absolutely nothing noble about this, right? Like there's nothing to celebrate here. It's a painful, unnecessary thing. And it will hurt the entire time, and it will hurt the child the entire time, right? Like not all of these babies make it. Matilda was 26 and a half weeks when she was born. She was touch and go for a little while, but again, the screams of the NICU, not all of these babies make it.
It's yeah, you had me tearing up there for a second.
Sorry. Like you are fighting for your life. When you are pregnant, it can absolutely 100% kill you. It almost killed me. And so when people, particularly men, tell you that this is what your body's supposed to do, don't worry about it, you can't listen to that, right? Like, and my generation, us older women, we need to start really making sure and fighting for younger women to make sure that they know what happens when you go into labor early, and how that, what your rights are, how that impacts you, what each choice that you make, how that is going to impact you going forward, because I had no idea.
Don't know their options, and our options are dwindling. That's the
Yes.
reality.
Yes. You are very much at the grace of where you live, right? Like if you're a woman in California or Nevada, I don't worry so much because we live here. But if we lived somewhere else, I mean, again, my daughter is a medically fragile woman. We have no idea what the implications for her future fertility will be and what options she will need going forward.
Yeah, 1000%. But thank you so much for sharing your story and
Yes.
for sharing this time with us. We There's just so much to fight for and so much that we need to still fight against, and it takes voices like yours to make sure that we can communicate and get the points across to the people that we need to reach. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you to Alexis. If you're watching, Alexis, I think it's still weird to call her Alexis because she was my teacher first. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Now I'm going to bring it to our panel. Thank you so much for the three of you for hanging in there and watching that along with us. that was a 40-minute interview. Alexis gave us a lot of her time, and I cut it down for some for time, for clarity. So there was so much there that we talked about. But Lindsay, I'm going to come to you first. We're going to stay in this EMTALA zone. First of all, can you explain what EMTALA is? I keep saying EMTALA. Can you explain what that case is and what it could mean for pregnant people across the country?
Yeah, so EMTALA stands for the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, and essentially, in the United States of America, if you go into an emergency room and you need life-saving care, an emergency room is not allowed to turn you away. So they have to provide the care to stabilize you and allow you to be transported to another hospital, be admitted, go home, whatever it is, but they have to basically provide you care if you go into an emergency room. What Idaho is asking for is a special carve out for abortion, meaning that if you go into an emergency room, they can do every service except provide you with an abortion. And I think what we've heard from this story and so many others is that abortion is healthcare and it is a necessary procedure in cases where it could, impact someone's life. And I think, there were some things that I really want to draw on that I heard in that story. And one is the cruelty of it all, right? That you would be forced as a person to make the decision to save, those situations are already really difficult to decide if you are going to, to pursue a pregnancy or to, maybe get the care that could save your life. It's also asking your family members and your support system to watch that happen. So if you went into an emergency room and you needed that care and you were denied it, your support system is rendered completely incapable of helping you. So you would literally be succumb to whatever was going to kill you because the provider couldn't provide that care. It also puts doctors in a horrible position where they, every doctor who goes into into being a doctor, makes that oath to provide the best patient care they can to their patients. And even knowing that this abortion might save someone's life, they would, be forced to deny that care or face criminal penalties. So we're taking highly skilled professionals that are so desperately needed in the economy, in the healthcare, that help and provide so much for our community. We're now making them criminals, and it's absolutely crazy that this would ever be a world that we live in. So that's kind of the EMTALA scenario in a nutshell. But yeah, Shelby, that is the harsh reality of this kind of dangerous rhetoric that we are putting out there.
It's horrific. And hearing that story, I mean, at one point I was, brought to tears hearing Alexis' story and thinking of the other folks, the families, the pregnant people across the country that will be, their lives will be at risk and they will have no say in an already very tense and terrifying situation.
One of the things that I just wanted to add is that people forget that every single pregnancy is different and like no two pregnancies are the same. And so we can't treat every single patient like with the same type of care. Like everyone requires a different service or like care because of the environment that they grew up in, because of whatever circumstances that they are in. And so I think we have to be really like careful with every single pregnant woman that comes in and provide the care that they deserve and they require. And it should also be quality care. Like a lot of the times they're not being provided with the quality care that they need. And so Texas is a good example. Women are leaving the state because they can't get the care that they deserve and going to other states where they can get that. And so that's just scary to think about because they're going in there, they're already scared because of the situation that they are in. And now they're encountering another situation where it can be very traumatic. And I think people forget that these are real people that are suffering and going through these devastating circumstances.
Definitely. MJ, I'm going to bring you in here as well to discuss this case. We have a pretty right-wing anti-abortion court hearing this case in particular. How do you think the court will interpret this case, and what do you foresee coming down specifically around EMTALA? We'll get to mifepristone in just a little bit.
I would like to be more optimistic on a range of topics that we work on, not just this one, but the Supreme Court is really unpredictable. And when you have, extremist activist judges on the court looking for opportunities to make their anti-abortion case, they will take every opportunity that they can. So I'm by no means a legal expert, but we have seen this court reverse past precedent. We have seen them rule on things that roll back all kinds of functions and features of government. We have seen them time and time again take the wrong side or impose their own, use these court cases as an opportunity to impose their own ideology on average people in America. So, I'm skeptical that they will make a decision that is really the best decision for people. And I think that, sort of should point us to the reality that we have a lot more work to do to make abortion healthcare, right? Abortion is exceptionalized. I mean, we're a healthcare organization. We work on abortion as a healthcare issue. And there's a whole range of implications when abortion is extracted from the rest of healthcare and treated as treated as something other than healthcare. And certainly the story that we just heard from Alexis is an example, right, of what could happen if we allow people to exceptionalize abortion. Actually, as you were talking about Idaho, I was thinking about a lot of the medical students that we work with and physicians leaving the state. Even in cases of a quote unquote normal pregnancy, a lot of people still can't access care because physicians do not want to practice in a state where they could be liable, where they're at that much risk. Physicians face considerable risk already practicing medicine, but to be in a state where the situation is so volatile and a provider could be attacked at any point, basically for just doing his or her job. We've seen there was a big story about a maternity ward shutting down in Boise. So it just is really an example of how the abortion debate and limiting people's access to abortion, forcing people to stay pregnant, everybody has a stake in that fight. You have a stake in that fight, whether you intend to expand your family and you're going to need maternity services. You have a stake in that fight if you're in a state and you're seeking pre-care, right? You want to be healthy enough to have. Every time somebody says Texas to me, or Florida for that matter, I have a lot of thoughts. But the first thought that comes to my mind when I think about Texas is the terrible numbers on maternal mortality, especially for women of color. And a lot of that is tied to the fact that Texas, Florida, and a number of other states have refused to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, which just turned 14 years old, which means that a lot of women that would be happy to expand their family, would love to have children. By the time they get to the point that they are ready to have a child, they're maybe not healthy enough, right? They didn't get 10, 20 years of preventative care because that is not available to people in a state like Texas where Medicaid expansion is not open, right? So in a lot of the states where abortion is becoming a crime, people can't even get access to the healthcare they need, even if they have no interest in abortion, right? They have no interest in abortion. They're interested in actually expanding their families. But we're all in the same boat, right? As long as this attack on abortion continues, it's really an attack on healthcare. And we really have to get a lot more people to see it that way in order to drive it out of the political arena and help normalize abortion as a basic healthcare function for people.
No, precisely. And even in, the case of preventative care, the likelihood of having an emergency delivery or, having your pregnancy wind up in a life-threatening situation gets exponentially higher if you don't have that prenatal care, the regular prenatal care. So you're going to have pregnant people that have not had regular access to prenatal care. And then, and like Alexis said, they will be forced to deliver this teeny tiny baby with no chance of survival. And it's just heartbreaking.
And at least Alexa had her mom there as an advocate on her behalf. But really, there are so many people that have no one to advocate on their behalf in the healthcare system. Or I think about, people in my family, non-English speakers who may be going into the hospital. They can't even communicate, right? And so it's just, it is really heartbreaking when you think that you're going into a facility, your life is at risk, and you're at the complete mercy of a system that often is not that concerned about you per se, and maybe concerned about the baby, but even then that concern about the baby comes at the expense of the person carrying the baby, right? So I just think it's really troubling.
Yeah, and if I could just add something here too, and I think what is a really important part of this is a court case at the Supreme Court level. So this is going to set a dangerous precedent for other things to follow. And we've seen this, right? Like every time they say, okay, we just did this one thing and now it's up to the states. Like that's a load of hooey. And they're going to continue to come after things. So if they decide that there's an exception for abortion, what's next? Are you going to deny care to HIV patients in the emergency room? Are you going to deny care to same-sex parents? Are you going, there's just a number of things that this could lead up to. And so what I think that this movement is starting to see, and I know that we on this call know, is that this really, beyond just touching this little issue, has a ripple effect that could impact so many people across this country, and really is driving us in a very, very dangerous direction where we are taking control out of the people who know what to do best, which is doctors and patients and their families and their support systems, and giving it to these people who are completely unqualified to make these decisions, which are political actors who are using this kind of rhetoric as a political football when people's real lives are at risk. It's dangerous, it's ugly, and it's cruel.
Exactly. And, when I was delivering my son, I had, one appointment a month. I had all the prenatal care. I got my epidural and my blood pressure dropped. It was terrifying. I blacked out. And you know who I wanted in that room with me? Not a Supreme Court justice. I wanted a doctor. You know who I wanted making my medical decisions? A doctor, not a politician, not Donald Trump, a doctor. Yes, Lindsay, thank you for bringing that up. I know Lisa on our team did also flag for us that this is not solely even, focused on abortion access. It's an issue of federal law taking precedence over a state law. And if the court rules in Idaho's favor, that has vast implications for a variety of different things, even outside of the scope of abortion care and healthcare. So it's terrifying. Another terrifying court case, if y'all are willing and able to keep going down the doom and gloom spiral, the mifepristone case in front of the Supreme Court. They started their oral arguments last month. Lindsay, I'm going to come back to you to give another breakdown of mifepristone, Mife, as we've been calling it. And then Denise, I'm going to come to you to talk about how it could also interact with Nevada's, stellar laws around abortion currently. But Lindsay, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, so I actually had the privilege of being in DC for the Supreme Court hearing. So that was a really exciting experience. And there was a lot of folks out in front of the Supreme Court. So it felt like we had the support system that we need. Mifepristone is the first in a series of pills that are taken as a medication abortion for patients. Most cases, this is prior to 10 weeks gestational age. The ruling or the court case right now is that they are asking, and by that I mean the opposition here is asking the court to say that the FDA was wrong, that the FDA, even though the mifepristone pill has been used for 20 years at this point, that there are some bunk science claims out there that have since been retracted, and all of the stuff that goes along with that. That those the retracted scientific studies are now somehow valid, and that the FDA was wrong, and that the Supreme Court needs to intervene and say that that this abortion pill, mifepristone, should no longer be available on the market. And this would impact about 63% of abortions today. So you are effectively making a national abortion ban. Remember that part where they said that they were going to leave this up to the states? effectively doing a national abortion ban across the nation when you withdraw the FDA approval of mifepristone. So super dangerous.
No, terrifying. And Denise, I'm going to come to you. I know you, well, both of you, Lindsay and Denise, have been working with the ballot initiative here, the Reproductive Freedom for All ballot initiative. How would this case interact with the state laws that we have here? Say that we, pass this ballot initiative and we get abortion access into our Constitution, fingers crossed. What would this case do with that?
Yeah, I think the case could dramatically restrict, but that's why it's so important for us to get the constitutional amendment passed in November. That's one of the reasons why the coalition came together to ensure that we had as much protections. We currently do have state law protections for abortion here, but we want to make sure that it is in our state, in our state constitution. And so that's the work that we're doing now. We're collecting signatures. We're out in the community talking to as many people as possible so that come November, we can get it in the ballot passed and then expand the protections for Nevadans here. I think people, what we know is that this is just another attempt from anti-abortion groups to end access to abortion, not just in, Texas or wherever they've already created restrictions, but across the country. And so they're aiming to ban abortion, but here in Nevada, we're going to keep fighting to make sure that we protect it. And so that every single Nevadan can make their own healthcare decisions, make decisions that are best for them with the doctors that they trust and with their family members, making decisions together that is best for them.
Yeah, thank you for that. And MJ, you work across the country and you've done, fantastic work in so many states. I know you helped get the ACA over the finish line, right? You've done so much for healthcare access. What are you seeing in other states? I know in Nevada here, we're very lucky. We're incredibly lucky to have such great abortion protections. We have this ballot initiative led by incredible folks here in the state. What are you seeing in states where maybe they aren't so lucky as people prep for this MIFI decision?
Well, I'll share that with you, but I just wanted to flag also on the MIFI case that what the court is trying to do in terms of undermining the FDA's authority to approve a drug, credibly approve a drug, is really dangerous for not just MIFI, but for drugs across the board, right? The Food and Drug Administration is the agency that approves drugs, all drugs, right? All prescription drugs. So we're talking drugs for cancer, drugs for Alzheimer, like you name it. And the idea, there's not, as you know, because you guys in Nevada worked with us on the prescription drug reform that we just passed in 2022. There's not a lot of things that I agree with pharma on, with the prescription drug lobbies on. The one thing I agree with them on is that this case is very, very dangerous for sick people that are depending on the FDA to approve new medicines. It creates a tremendous disincentive to invest in new medicines. Why would you invest in new medicines to treat anything if the FDA doesn't really have the authority to approve them in a serious way? So this is really an attack on abortion, but also an attack on government and an effort to weaken the federal government's basic authority to approve medicines. And that could impact millions and millions and millions of people. So it's a very dangerous case. So I would say across the country, we're working with various different groups and we're working with them on different things. And there's certainly the whole slew of ballot measures that we're watching pop up. It almost feels like every other day there's a new. Nebraska is contemplating one. South Dakota has one that they're going to that's qualifying for the ballot. Florida just this week qualified for the ballot. So there is a lot of energy among regular people to codify their rights. And I think that that's great. I think people, the majority of people in this country have supported safe, legal abortion for decades. And a lot of people are saying, listen, this Supreme Court decision is too extreme. We trust the citizens of our state to make this decision and figure it out for our state more than we trust, kind of like what you just said, Shelby, like You know, if it was me, I wouldn't want a Supreme Court judge making that decision. I would rather trust my neighbors, trust my coworkers, trust my family members to make that decision via a ballot measure. And in states where you can do ballot measures, I think that's a great opportunity. But we're seeing lots of other challenges. And one thing I just want to mention that might not be on people's radar is the challenge around insurance coverage for abortion. It really is, I can't agree more with what Alexa said in the video, that increasingly things are starting to boil down to what zip code you live in, right? Where do you actually live? So, you know, we have done a lot of work over the years, and certainly there was a huge fight in the passage of the Affordable Care Act to get abortion covered. There's no federal funding for abortion coverage, and the ACA specified that money that was being used to cover abortion had to be separate from, you know, subsidies on the exchange, for instance. But now we're facing a situation where people who have coverage for abortion still can't access abortion if they're in a state that has an abortion ban, right? If abortion is illegal in your state, even if you have an insurance policy that covers abortion, you can't get an abortion in your state. And by the way, insurance is very infrequently translatable to other states, right? Most people can't just take their policy and go to another state. That's for anything, right? I'm in cancer treatment. I have a policy that applies here in the DMV area. I can't take my policy to Arizona and get cancer treatment in Arizona. So we're bumping up, right? We have the problem with the right to abortion. Is it legal? Can people go get an abortion with reassurance that they are not going to be arrested? And keep in mind, even in states like Texas, where it's written into the law that people cannot be arrested, people are being arrested for having an abortion, right? That's a real thing. And we're going to see a lot more of that over as this debate continues to unfold. So it's the right to access, people having a codified right that protects them from legal consequences. But then you have the big problem of access. And having insurance doesn't guarantee you access if you live in a state with an abortion ban. So we're seeing a lot of that and working with a lot of advocates to see if we can figure out workarounds. The insurance industry, I will say again, they have not always been an ally on many of the things that I've worked on, but I think there is a lot of genuine interest in the abortion among the insurance providers to figure out exactly what we can do about this, right? So I would just flag that for people. And then we're also doing quite a lot of work on CPCs. Those are the pregnancy crisis centers that masquerade as healthcare centers, right? They often, Lindsay can probably tell you a lot about this, they often set up shop right across the street from a Planned Parenthood and offer themselves up as an alternative to Planned Parenthood as though they are a healthcare facility, when in fact, they are not healthcare facilities and they rarely have healthcare providers working in them. One reason why we are why I think there's greater interest now even than there has been before is they seem to be proliferating even faster. And that's, I think, because we've seen a lot of clinics shut down. As clinics shut down, they see an opening to open up shop. They collect tons of information from people and they store people's medical information. So think about that. They're not a healthcare facility. There's really nobody in there that can offer healthcare advice. They collect people's personal information and they ask people a lot of questions, very extensive questions. What are they doing with this information? No idea. In a lot of states, they are increasingly getting public money. And there's some states that have actually Pennsylvania just did this, rolled back the provision of public money to pregnancy crisis centers. So that the pregnancy crisis center industry, it's really a nexus for the anti-abortion extremists. A lot of their activists plug into it. A lot of their money is concentrated in that network. There's no transparency. So we're seeing increased interest in that, especially as a lot of these CPCs line up to get money in state budget fights.
Yeah, I'd like to just, if I could put a fine point on something that MJ said, because the undermining of the FDA approvals. I think sometimes it's really hard for us to wrap our mind around that until we are kind of pointed towards the specific things that the anti-abortion movement is looking at. So we've already seen this in Alabama with the IVF ruling that came out. So we're talking about underwriting IVF, stem cell research, the drugs that you need in scenarios where you are pursuing IVF, PrEP and PEP for patients who are trying not to transmit HIV from them to their loved ones. So there are so many aspects that underwriting this would do, and it's part of a long game that is driven by the far right evangelicals in this country to define what it means to be pregnant, to define what it means to where conception is versus this is some very deep ingrained stuff. And with each one of these court cases, it's a building block to getting there. And I think we need to continue to stay vigilant, because when Dobbs happened, I think a lot of us felt like, yes, it was the end of the world, but really it was the top of the card at a deck of a house of cards, right? That we are now facing all of these other fundamental issues about what it means to be free in this country, what it means to have rights over your own body, what it means to be a pregnant person or a woman in this country. These are all fundamental to who we are as a country, and we are facing them head on. So if you're not a part of this movement, I would suggest you get on it, because it is going to, if it's not today, it's not impacting you and your family today, it will be, and very soon. And so that is my call to the masses on today's call.
Yeah, I want to highlight something that Margarita and Lindsay are just alluding to, and it's that one, the healthcare system is not accessible to all people. It's so complicated. Reproductive healthcare is also not accessible to all people. And these restrictions and bans and all the challenges that are going to appear are only going to fall the hardest on the people who are most marginalized. There's low-income families that might not be able to access the care they need. There's people in rural communities that are already seeing the devastation of no clinics, no healthcare, no hospitals, nothing. There's also communities of color who we already know that there's still systemic racism. There's so many issues that different communities are facing. And so all this layer of issues that we're seeing are going to keep impacting more people because of the devastation of these two potentially large, significant Supreme Court cases. And we have to be really aware and knowledgeable and understand that it might not impact you now, but it will be. And it also does depend on where you live. And so we have to be very, very vigilant and aware, and make sure that we are continuing to fight for all these communities, but also for those who might not even realize it. They might not know that they need it now, but they will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I always use this example because I think sometimes there's a tendency for people to tune out of the big picture on abortion if they feel like, I'm not going to have an abortion. It's not my problem. I'm not going to have an abortion. I don't believe in abortion. Listen, you can believe or not believe in abortion, but the truth is, a lot of people who don't believe in abortion also don't want their neighbor down the street being thrown in jail for having one, right? So it is actually your responsibility to protect people from that scenario. And that scenario is not a crazy scenario. And it's not, I always say to people, because we've done a lot of work in the South and canvassed on this issue in the South, we are already living in the day where somebody who has no intention of having an abortion and has been looking forward to becoming a parent their entire life is 6 months pregnant, not wearing a seatbelt, and gets pulled over by a police officer in a southern state, say Georgia, say Florida, and then a prosecutor is making a decision about whether that person endangered the fetus, and a prosecutor is making a decision about whether that person is going to give birth in jail, right? That's where we are. We should not kid ourselves, right? Criminalization is rampant, and people, anti-abortion ideological people, do not care if folks get caught in the crossfire, right? They don't care about that Black pregnant woman that got pulled over in Georgia, because a lot of Black people get pulled over in Georgia, and that she wasn't wearing her seatbelt, not because she didn't care about her fetus, but because she had to run into the CVS and get something right quick. And it's kind of uncomfortable wearing a seatbelt. You might forget to put it on if you're 6 months pregnant, right? So everyday things that might not seem like a thing are going to become a thing for a lot more people beyond the population of people that are seeking abortion. And it's just really, that is the biggest case for what Lindsay is saying, that everybody really has a responsibility to get involved here, whether you care about abortion, you don't care about abortion, you personally support it, you don't support it, whatever, right? This is going to impact many, many, many more people than just the people that are seeking abortion.
Well, and speaking of everybody getting involved, we have a question from one of our viewers, Manuel, wants to know, are there any talking points y'all have for men who wish to have these conversations with other dudes? Emphasis on the dude, Manuel says. Anybody can take this. I toss it to the three of y'all. Who wants it?
I'll take it. I have a lot of conversations with dudes. Shout out to the dudes in my life. Hey, I think that like at the root of all of these conversations is people who are pregnant and women want to be treated the same way that men present in these spaces. And so any way that we can equalize that is what it is. This isn't about like us moving past men in this space, right? Or asking for more. We just want the same. We want to feel safe in our homes. We want to feel safe and provided for when we get pregnant. We want to feel safe and provided for by our family members. And we don't want to live in a world where we have to live in shame or in secrecy or in hiding. So like generally my talking points always start with like, listen first. To the people in your family and the people that surround you and the people that are impacted by these kinds of decisions. And I think like if you are open to it, you will be surprised how many people have been impacted by these. 1 in 4 women in their lifetime will have an abortion. Most patients who come into a Planned Parenthood health center already have multiple children and are very familiar of what it is like to be a parent. So I think that the more that you're even open to having those conversations, Manny, the more people are going to start sharing their stories. I mean, I have it, we all work in this business and people come and tell me their story on a daily basis. It's almost like I'm a doctor, right? And they're like, check this mole. But when you start doing that, I think you learn so much and be upfront about it. Tell people that you support, pregnant people having an abortion. That's a good first step, and have those conversations and challenge those fundamental values that people hold, because oftentimes their fundamental value isn't necessarily wrong. It's just pointed in the wrong direction. So just having those conversations, Manny, and listen first. And I just think that's probably the best way to go. But we also do have talking points on our website. You're more than welcome to, if you're having, we call them the tough family conversations. So you can visit our website at ppvotesnv.org.
The only other thing I'll add is that there's so much stigma around like reproductive health care, abortion. And so just being open to having these conversations is so important. Many people don't even want to say abortion because they're so scared, like they're going to be judged. And so just being open, like Lindsay said, and having these conversations in a very authentic way and listening. You might not agree right away, but it's also about making sure that women get the care that they need. And that's just it. Like, everyone deserves to get the healthcare that they need and deserve. And like we all need it. I want to go to the doctor. I want to be able to make my appointment. I want to be able to talk to my doctor and trust that the advice they're giving me, it's like legit medical advice, and feel comfortable leaving there knowing that I've made the best decision that is for me. And everyone should have that right, not just pregnant women or not just specific people. Like everyone should have the right to get the care that they need and make informed decisions with their doctors and their partners. Like if I wanted to make a whatever decision, like if I feel comfortable talking to my partner, like I want to get advice, or whatever other people are going through it, just that's the right thing to do. And no politician should be making these decisions for everyday Americans.
MJ, I saw you wanting
Yeah,
to.
I mean, I would just say that, like +1 on what Denise says. And by the way, like a lot of men already agree, right? Nobody wants to be told what to do with their lives. And there's nobody that's more an expert in your life than you are, right? And so we should, there is there is this sense that somehow women don't know or women can't or what. Listen, I mean, it's exactly what Lindsay said. Most people already have kids when they're coming into the clinic. They're aware of what parenthood entails. People think about this a lot. Most people decide to have an abortion because they decide they want to finish their education, or they can't afford to have a child right now, or they're just not ready and they don't want to bring an unwanted child into the world. All very legitimate, good reasons to end a pregnancy. So I just think, sometimes we think men are going to think vastly differently about this than than we do. And it's really not true. Polls really show that men understand abortion to be an economic issue. Even blue collar men understand abortion to be an economic issue. And they understand that given that the consequences of having a child fall much more heavily on the woman than on anybody else, it should be up to her to decide what she wants to do, whether she wants to expand the family, not expand the family. The person that is going to face the consequences should be the person making that decision. And there's really nobody better qualified. And I think I think once you actually start talking to people, you'll find that a lot of men agree with you.
Yeah. Nope. Manny says, thank you. Just bros being bros for the cause. And he salutes y'all. So thank you for all of your feedback on his question. So we are going to head towards wrapping up. We're coming up on 6 o'clock. I want to respect everybody's time. And I know our viewers at home, it's been a heavy hour. I do also want to just make a note that while these court cases are very scary, here in Nevada, we do have amazing leaders. We have folks on the ground organizing, Lindsay, Denise, MJ at the national level. We have an amazing ballot initiative team here working to enshrine abortion access into our state constitution. Last legislative session, Senate Majority Leader Nicole Cannizzaro had SB 131 to protect abortion care providers for folks coming in out of state. We do have amazing leaders and amazing organizers here on the ground in Nevada working to protect our rights in every way that they can. And Lindsay, I know you flagged that Planned Parenthood will still continue to provide abortions, within the legal bounds. So all is not lost, but if folks do want to get involved and fight the good fight and channel their fear and anger somewhere, how do y'all recommend that they do that? We'll go round robin. Lindsay, I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, so we are embarking on what has been, at least in my time here, the biggest campaign since the 1990 referendum. So I encourage folks to visit the website, which is Nevadans for Reproductive Freedom. It's NV4, the number 4, reprofreedom.com. And sign up to volunteer. We're going to need you. We are set to qualify for the ballot in 2024, and we're going to need everybody to talk to their friends and their neighbors. You can also follow us on social. It's awesome. We need financial contributions from everybody to help us get across the line. And, I just also want to shout out the amazing healthcare providers that continue to do this work every day, and just want to recognize that because they are truly on the front line. And so let's just do all those things and know that this is going to take everybody. And I expect you all to be Manny Dude ambassadors and go out there and spread the good word. So Denise.
I was just going to say, we need a bros, dudes for reproductive freedom. No, same. We in Nevada, we have the constitutional amendment that we're all working for as a coalition. And so I invite everyone to join us as a volunteer, to donate, to show up. We have events. If you're out in the community and you see one of our canvassers, sign the petition. There's still time. And be friendly to our canvassers if you see them. Also say hi, sign the petition, bring your friends and family so that they will also sign it. If you specifically want to join us, go to reproductivefreedomforall.org, and we're happy to connect with you and have you join us for all the activities we're going to be doing this year as well.
Yes. MJ, what about you?
This might be provocative because I don't know if this is a C3 or a C4 show, but I would just say that there is this matter of a big election coming up. It does matter quite a bit who's running the country. Depending on who's running the country, we will either have an abortion ban or we will be making steady progress toward more publicly funded abortion and toward restoring access and rights to people. So the number one thing I think is people should vote in the election, and you should do your research on who's really on our side on this issue and vote accordingly. And then I think if you're lucky enough to be in Nevada, which most of your audience is going to be here, these ladies, I mean, if I were you guys and I lived in Nevada, I'd be hooked up with Lindsay and Denise. Like, they seem like they know what they're doing. I would just take my clipboard and go do whatever they told me to do. And everywhere across the country that there is a ballot initiative, we're encouraging people to do the same thing, get involved with the ballot initiative. The other thing that we do a lot is we really look for messengers, and that includes a lot of healthcare providers, a lot of medical students, nurses, people that have been through the healthcare system, and a lot of people that really don't have any intention of having an abortion, but are willing to say, I didn't have an abortion. I don't know what it's like. Therefore, I don't actually think I should be telling other people what to do, right? Which is very basic, but a lot of the work that we do is to expand the constituency in support of abortion freedom and access. And that means really getting everybody to agree. At the end of the day, like, freedom means people can make their own decision, and it's not for anybody else to be making that decision on their behalf. And the more sort of regular people that say that, the better off we are, I think. So there's lots of opportunities to do lots of different things, but it's a pleasure to be talking to Nevada, because you guys are really in a state where when people come together, you really make remarkable things happen, and you have a long history and legacy of really protecting and expanding people's rights on abortion. So I'm excited for what's going to happen in your state.
And we have Benjamin in the chat saying, "You best believe I always take my clipboard and do what Denise tells me."
That's what I would do. I wouldn't be like, I'd just be like, yes, tell me, give me my list, I'll do it.
It's a safe bet. It's a safe bet. Yes, if you are out and about and you see folks with the ballot initiative clipboards for you to sign, please do so. I know that they just surpassed 100,000 signatures, and there's a few months left. So get out there, sign the petition, get your friends to sign. I signed at the library. My husband works for the library district. He was very excited that it was a marriage of our two passions. So get out there, sign the petition. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Sign the petition. Do what you got to do to get your friends and family on board, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.